to the Talkaholics podcast. God knows what episode this is, but we're getting there. We're getting the high numbers, huh? Almost triple digit. I'm Razia.
This is Iman.
And today we're going to talk about probably one of our most serious episodes that you'll probably see in a bit. Definitely not like our BuzzFeed quiz party stuff that we've been doing.
No.
Just to wrap up something that's, you're definitely aware of, you've been seeing all over social media, all over the news, and is a topic that is important to the both of us, and certainly Iman. And we wanted to talk about this and use, whatever tiny platform that we have to have this discussion and share our thoughts on the matter. We put a lot of effort and structure into this episode, so it might not be as like free-flowing as it usually is when we have these discussions, but hopefully it's an opportunity for us to share our thoughts, but also like learn something out of this. So
and I mean, like, the reason we did it that way is because we want to make sure that all our information is correct. And like, okay, so first of all, obviously the topic is no need to beat around the bush.
No.
The topic is obviously like the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement that sparked through, I mean, various things, but really the catalyst was the murder of George Floyd on May 25th. And so initially, I know, like, for myself, as a Black woman, I told Razia, I was like, I didn't really want to do an episode on this because I'm just like tired of things like this continuously happening, and then people like look to the Black community to tell them what to do when they're grieving.
Almost,
and it's like, give us the solution, but it's like we're grieving, so other people need to step up. But actually, my friend Afra came up with the idea and gave us the suggestion was to it's still important to talk about it, but maybe focus on like the positive outcomes that are happening because of this like worldwide movement now. And so that's kind of what we wanted to focus on today, but start off with the episode kind of just wrapping up the situation and also talking about, I guess, our feelings for a little bit before we go into the bulk of the episode. So as I mentioned, the murder of George Floyd was really the catalyst in Minneapolis, or in Minnesota as a whole, where we saw a lot of this start. But as I'm sure everybody knows, right before George Floyd, there was Ahmaud Arbery and there was Breonna Taylor. Ahmaud Arbery was not killed by police. I heard that they were former police, but I am not entirely sure on that, so don't take my word for it. But Breonna Taylor was killed by police. And so there was a lot of build-up, and I think that with what happened to George Floyd, I think it was just like the breaking point for a lot of people. Especially like just in the way that it happened. Like, it was just in front of all these people who felt so helpless and they couldn't do anything about it. Because they're scared for their own lives with interrupting police. And you see people who are supposed to be out there protecting you, killing a man in front of everybody during the day. Not that it would make any difference if it was nighttime, but I'm just saying, it's broad daylight, people are going around about their day, and someone's being killed by the people that are supposed to be protecting the public. And not only is it just not just the man killing George Floyd by choking him, but it's also the 3 other officers that stood there and did nothing, who are obviously a part of that crime as well. So, I mean, like I said, everybody knows what happened. I don't think we need to relive it because it is very triggering for a lot of people, myself included. So I'll hand it off to you if you have any thoughts or feelings before we go into it.
I mean, I don't think in this sense, like, I'm happy that you felt comfortable and felt ready to share your feelings and discuss about this, because really this is like, I am a POC, but this is certainly not my like situation to be like, it's not my opinion that should matter the most. However, like, as a POC, as a person of color, a minority, I'd still hold the responsibility of like talking about it and making sure I'm talking to other people about it and educating myself, because we all have places to learn. But one thing that kind of, Black Lives Matter has always come up in the past. I think 2015, 2016 was the last time I remember it being big, where I think it was Trayvon Martin who was shot and killed, and that was around the time that Kendrick Lamar, if you remember, he made All Right, the music video, and like that was kind of the anthem for the movement at the time. And so like in previous years I've seen this kind of go up and down, and like, you know, people care about the hashtag, people don't. But I feel like this time around it does feel different. I feel like everyone can agree it does feel that more people are paying attention, and at the very least like choosing to be vocal. And then, you know, this time more than ever they're like placing a lot more importance on education, which I've never seen like so many people, especially young people, like, rally around, which is like nice and for the first time kind of hopeful. Not to say that this is like, you know, now's the time that everything's going to be solved and everything's going to be perfect.
No, yeah.
No, there's still a lot to be done. My thoughts are just that like it sucks. Obviously the video was like not fun to watch. Of
I didn't watch
George
it.
Floyd. Yeah, I don't. I really would not recommend
I don't.
that.
Like, people were spreading it around, and like,
Yeah.
it's always with any of these cases, it's always like, watch this and like look at the injustice that has occurred. But it's like, people need to understand that
It's not
we
easy
shouldn't
for everyone.
we
Yeah.
shouldn't have to
Yeah.
see things like that. Like,
100%.
you're desensitizing yourself to murder. Like, that is murder, and
Yeah.
like, it's not good for people's mental health to be watching things like that. And it's,
Exactly.
I know that video is a big part of legitimizing what happened. Like,
Right.
people, that there is proof, like, this is what happened. It's not just someone's word, which is problematic in itself, because you should believe victims.
Right.
But yeah, so I understand the need for video, especially at a time like this with, you know, technology is everywhere, and that's what people use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't watch it, and I don't plan
wouldn't
on watching
recommend it. So really quickly before we kind of jump into like what our main focus of this episode is, which is to kind of highlight our positive approach to this topic and kind of give our 2 cents in terms of like the progress we've made in the last few weeks. I know Iman has kind of put together a few notes to quickly recap the BLM situation right now. And I don't know how much in detail you want to get into, Iman, but we'll kind of quickly skim over it for those who are kind of, especially if you're new to this conversation, to this topic. And Black Lives Matter, like you're missing context, so this is a really good important portion.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't want to get into much detail, because it's I feel like people can get this information very easily.
Yeah.
They just have to do the work themselves and look for it, and like it's everywhere. Like, it's not like it's hidden. But I did want to talk about it a little bit, because at the end of the day, this is the reality of the situation. Like, yes, we're seeing a lot of positive change, and we're seeing a lot of people come together in solidarity, and we're seeing a lot of allyship and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is what has happened, and I don't want to dismiss the very real and very negative situation that has occurred. So,
yeah,
I already mentioned that the murder of George Floyd happened May 25th, and he was choked by an officer for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And he choked him by putting his knee on his neck. And like, the horrifying part of it is that he was telling him that he couldn't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And like, the officers are first responders.
Mm.
As well, so they are very, like, they are educated to see when someone is fighting for their life.
Yeah.
So at that point, that officer knew that he was like, the life is draining out of his body, and he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so
I was
that,
just gonna,
like, that's just the whole thing. Like, that at the end of the day, it's murder. Like, no matter what anybody says, he's a murderer. And also, again, I don't want to make this too long, but like, he's had past killings on the job as well, so like, he has a history, and all this was about George Floyd was at the convenience store buying cigarettes, and the employee or the cashier believed that his $20 bill was a counterfeit, and so he called the police, and then that's what occurred.
Yeah.
And that's not how someone should be approached.
Yeah.
Because of a counterfeit bill,
or be treated, period. Yeah.
Anyway, like, regardless, but
yeah.
Okay, and then with Ahmaud Arbery, he was just running in the neighborhood and was chased by 2 white men. I believe it was father and son,
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And from the reading that I did, it was initially the father and son that were chasing him, and then another white man in the neighborhood noticed the chase happening and also joined the pursuit, and then resulted in his killing. And then with Breonna Taylor, she was asleep at home, and the police broke down her door in an attempted drug sting, apparently, and she was shot 8 times in the aftermath of that. So those are just a few cases. There are literally so many cases like this, and not just cases that we know of, but there's also so many cases, and that's something that's very important, because there's so many cases where there isn't footage or there isn't witnesses, and so we will never know of it because no one is speaking for them. And so my main point of just recapping all of this is that regardless of all the good things that are happening right now, there's so much more to be done. And then, and like Razia mentioned, like there's so many people, you know, like whether it be celebrities or just whoever, that are, you know, with the movement and, you know, hashtag like Black Lives Matter, whatever, but then they're gone in a week or two. Yeah. And it was just part of the trend, and then, you know, back to normal life.
Right.
And like that's not the case, and people like Black people don't get to do that. This is their lived experience, and they have to continue with along with all the trauma. So 100%. That was kind of my intention, is highlighting that fact. 100%. And just making people understand that like it's not over until there's actual systemic change, and like that's a long time coming.
Yeah, it's and I think an important thing too is to like remember that these are like everyday people who like are not outright doing anything bad. These are like these are just instances where the police certainly overstepped, and you know, I think like I kind of mentioned a point about it later in our notes and stuff, but like I think the important part is to just like be empathetic, just realize that this is like somebody,
this a human being,
somebody's like loved one, someone's best friend, so something to remember. But thank you, Iman, for going through that. But to really quickly kind of just pull this back into our initial intent for the episode, I think we wanted to highlight the positive changes and kind of how like this became a global movement. And again, I mentioned in the past, like any other time this hashtag has come up, it's been either American focused or a few people in Canada, a few people in like, you know, the UK, whatever.
It's also interesting because sorry to interrupt, but like I have a couple friends who are international. They're not from North. And they reached out to me, and they were kind of like they wanted to understand, which was great. And I had no problem saying anything or like trying to explain our point of view from North America versus like the European point of view, because what they mentioned was like, for us, we don't see it, or I don't want to generalize because it's not always the case, but a lot of the times the issue is more immigrant versus non-immigrant in Europe versus like a white versus black thing.
Yeah.
So like in North America, it's very much white versus black, or like whatever the case may be. But in Europe, or at least from the countries that my friends were from, or like, so example for Spain, it's very much like the government is anti-immigrant, or the system is anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim.
Yeah.
Like that was the kind of the context where they're coming from. So they were like, okay, can you explain this to me? Because we don't really see it like that here. Again, that's their point of view.
Right.
That's not necessarily what's happening, because obviously, as you can see, people protesting, like it's still a very real issue all around. But it was interesting to kind of hear that feedback.
For sure. Yeah. No, and I mean, I'm kind of going to touch on it later on, but it's just, I'm having conversations with people outside of my personal like group and stuff, because I'm also like within the workplace, like I'm definitely one of the only POCs, and especially visible minority too, right?
Yeah.
So again, like I don't want it to seem like a burden, but like I do end up like, not even just in the workplace that I've been in, consistently with race topics, I've had to almost be like the representative. Do you know what I'm saying? To kind of say, okay, here's why people are sensitive about this topic. Here's why this is the way that it is. Yes, racism exists in Canada, kind of stuff. Like, so, that's kind of been my experience too, to kind of hear different perspectives and be like, oh, you weren't exposed to this. I understand. So let me, but yeah.
But also people need to learn how to do things on their just putting that out there. I mean, like, yeah, it's great that you feel comfortable enough to approach someone who you know, whether it be like someone in the workplace, a friend or whatever, who is part of the Black community, or if it's like a greater like person of color issue, that you feel comfortable enough to go and ask. But people should also understand that sometimes the person you're speaking to doesn't have the capacity to give you the answer all the time,
and shouldn't have
for whatever reason, and they don't have to either. So like sometimes you just need to do it. You need if you're interested in change, you need to do the work.
Yeah, exactly. So, you get the point.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Hopefully people get it too. Anyway, let's talk about some positive stuff. Let's talk about stuff. So I mean, some of the like actual, I don't want to say they're concrete systemic changes, but like some of the stepping stones in creating systemic change, there have been things that are happening. And so, for example, on May 21st, Louisville, that's how you say it, right? Louisville Metropolitan Police Department announced it would require all sworn officers to wear body cameras. The fact that that wasn't a thing before is an issue, but hey, it's happening now, so that's good. They also mentioned that they would be changing how the department comes out, how the department carries out search warrants in response to George Taylor's death. But I don't know if that's like, you know how it might just be talk. Sorry, not George Taylor. That was the wrong name. Sorry, Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
Sorry. In response to Breonna Taylor's death, but again, like a lot of times police like come out with statements, and then never follow through with it. So I don't really know if that is really a thing, but I mean, it's something for now, and hopefully, I mean, there's so many petitions circulating, and we will link to petitions too that you guys can support that are creating change. So, but like big things that I wanted to talk about were the whole defunding the police movement that's happening. And so in Minneapolis, the Minneapolis City Council has committed to disbanding the police, which is crazy, and that is because of the protest. Like that is because of the public, what they fought for. And that's also something that is currently in the works in many cities, but I wanted to say, because we're from Toronto, it is in the works in Toronto as well. There are Toronto councillors that are putting forward a motion to defund the police. And I think I saw, I don't want to say for sure, but I think I saw a statistic that was only going to be by 10%, which does amount to like, I think over $100 million or over $200 million. However, it's still just 10%. Like that's just 10% of their funding. Right. Can you imagine how much money are they freaking getting?
Yeah, I know. But just the idea that I kind of wrote it as a note here, the fact that like one of my biggest things about the positive aspects that came out of this movement is the fact that we're even talking about defunding the police. Like that, like somebody made a tweet or a post about it that like gave it like even a year ago, like that term defund the police would have gone over people's head. That would have been considered too left, too radical, and I feel like it's only relevant now. Well, not only because of what's been happening, but it's because of the education, the amount of things that are out there that are explaining exactly why it matters, and it's not as like the term or the statement sounds like it's doing a lot more than it is, but really it's just like looking very frankly at, you know, statistically how much police departments get funded, and then considering how much that gives them power to, you know, militarize and, you know, not care for societies really, but control, right? So and people just didn't understand what that meant. What does defund, like even my family, they were like, defund the police, like does that mean get rid of the police? And it's like no, that is not what it means. It means we need to be looking in our communities to be doing a lot of the safekeeping, of keeping the community safe. And then when it comes to like real true crime, you know, like things that need that type of force, then you bring in the, but I would say as a start, people should not be calling police into their neighborhoods to begin with. Like if you see something happen that doesn't require like immediate assistance, like if someone is getting like shot, if someone is like gonna die, okay, I understand. But if you see like a petty theft or something that if you know that you could just go into the police station and report and it would be the same
outcome, go to the police station and report it.
Yeah.
Don't be calling police into your community. Like, with what we're seeing, that is, like, I just find that, like, you want to cause harm. And you know what? White people have been using that to intentionally cause harm to Black people. And we've seen it. We saw that video of that woman and this man
they share the same last name, Cooper.
He would always be going through I think he biked, right, in the park.
Yeah, he's just a bird watcher. He's literally just a bird watcher.
He was like an avid, person that went through that trail.
Yeah.
And this woman had her dog not on the leash, even though it was a trail that specified that dogs needed to be on their leash. And he asked her to put the dog on the leash, and she decided she didn't like him telling her what to do, and threatened to call the police. And knew that, like, and on the phone she's saying, "I'm with African American." Like, she knew what she was.
100%.
So, by the way, she got her dog back. Just saying.
Did she?
Yeah. Like, are we surprised? But
yikes. Okay.
So yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's all of that stuff. So.
But what are the positive things that you have been seeing, right?
Yeah. No. So I kind of made that general point of, like, I'm loving that, especially on Twitter, people are sharing how they're making individual acts within their personal life to confront and or start discussions with family members, with friends, with people that we might have known in the back of our heads that they're making the wrong assumptions or might have the wrong beliefs, to bring it up to the dinner table and be like, hey, we're talking about this, it's relevant right now. And learning what we've shared, so many people have been saying really, really great resources that I'm genuinely bookmarking so I can reference later. And some of it is here that I have, like, in, like, different links and stuff. So maybe I should start by sharing my screen. And the last thing too is, like, I love that there's questions on Twitter that point out our inactivity. So, like, there's one lady who asked, what was the last book you read by a Black woman? And it's just kind of like, it puts you in your place and gets you to, like, really think. And even me too, like, having done English in my, like, university years, it's probably the last time I did. So
yeah.
Pretty incredible that that's being pointed out. But just a few I love this gif, I don't know why this is here. But just to point out a few great things that have happened. I saw this tweet that, New Zealand, who's, kind of become the new Canada in terms of, like, being respected and considered the peaceful country, that they got police in New Zealand to scrap the increased use of guns, which is incredible. And I'm glad, again, like, I'm glad this is an international movement. It's not just Canada, America, that we're seeing it across. So this is really cool that I saw this. Being more Toronto specific, just how Iman mentioned that interest in cutting police budget by 10% is still out there. Again, still in discussion mode, right? As it kind of specifies here. So, I mean, we're sensitive to that, but again, huge that this is on the table. I saw too that anti-Black racism is now being considered a public health crisis in Toronto, which is phenomenal. I'm a big supporter of intersectionality. Like, we should be considering,
definitely,
like, how seeing this issue not just as a race political, like, law issue, but it relates to other things like mental health and health in general. So love that.
Definitely, yeah. Especially, like, you see it. I think you see it here in Canada as well. But I've seen so many cases in the States where, like Black, specifically Black women, are dying for things they shouldn't. Like, they should be able to be treated for, because the doctors don't believe that they don't believe that they're actually sick, or they don't believe the patient, basically, about their symptoms and things like that, and then they end up dying when they could have been treated.
This post has kind of been viral, but again, to reiterate the positive aspects that these things have happened. The man who murdered George Floyd has been charged. We know that the others were charged at this time, but since I don't know if you saw,
one has been released.
Yeah, because of bail, because of donations that were raised for him, which is really painful, actually. Disgusting.
Yeah.
The cases are being reopened, communities are being invested in, all of these things. But it's really important to note that, especially those who are signing petitions for protesting, that this is not to waste. Like, this is, I love this.
Yeah, definitely. Petitions are doing so much of the work.
Yeah. So that's amazing. I don't know why this is all small like this. But one thing that should have been done decades and decades and decades ago, I feel like, that the Confederate flag ban. I don't know why we're tied to this. I've never understood it. But the fact that we're slowly in America considering to get rid of this altogether. It should just
Also,
be...
there's petitions to disband the KKK or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, like, the fact that that's not even, like,
Dude.
the KKK is not, I don't think it's illegal in the States yet.
No, here's the thing. I remember hearing a spoken word that actually was, like, on, it was, like, Three Girls on Ellen or something. And they were talking about how, like, you know, in America, like, how certain books are banned there in terms of education. Like, at a certain point, To Kill a Mockingbird was banned at one point. 1984 was banned. Like, censorship in the American education system at one point was very popular. I don't know about right now, so that's why I'm saying at one point. But, like, in the spoken word, they mentioned that those books are banned, but the KKK website is still free and out there. And it just was like, you know, context. You're just like, censorship to a level where it doesn't make sense even is, like, crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because I saw a tweet and it was like petitions to abolish the KKK are circulating, and I'm like, hold up, wait.
Yeah.
Are they not already abolished?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They're still running and alive, and it's just like...
Yeah, it gives you context to, like, who we're calling terrorists at this point, too, right? Like, fuck, like, if they're going around lynching people and we still haven't, like, do you know what I'm saying? And then the big thing that's been happening kind of recently, too, is reconsidering all this, you know, Confederate statues that are all across America, and problematic, like, street names and things like that. They've been, you know, defaced on purpose and for good reason. Just to return back to this, the reason why I kind of wanted to leave off with the no-knock warrants at the very end here is because, yes, like, there is a law put in place that now, you know, those warrants aren't, you know, possible to use anymore. But it's also a reminder that, like, that law came first before we've ever really done anything about Breonna Taylor's case and truly, like, convicted the people who killed her. So, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's an interesting point to hold on, because it's like the government is doing, you know, face value stuff by putting her name on a law where she was never really truly, you know, redeemed or, like, saw justice. So I
mean, like, her killers are still, they haven't been charged with anything. From the last I heard, they were on leave. They haven't even been fired, from my understanding. So
yeah, exactly. So I know you've mentioned these things.
I think we can move on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop sharing because I think I can speak to this. We also wanted to really quickly touch on allyship and what it means to be, you know, whether or not you're a person of color too. You know, how can you support your fellow Black friends or members of the Black community in a time like this, which obviously, you know, is an emotional time. It's a stressful time. We're all at home too. Quarantine, I don't think makes this any better for people. It gives you more time and space to be anxious and worried, right? When you're not distracted by, like, normal everyday things. So, how can we, especially POCs, do to help out and make our communities better? Kind of talked to Iman about this before, but I've always had, like, a strange, like, the word ally is, like, weird to me only because, like, the title feels very formal and very, like, special, like, oh, I'm supporting a movement, blah, blah, all this stuff, when really for me it's like, no, I respect other people's lives. And, like, of course, like, it's do you know what I'm saying? When you get called, or even call yourself an ally, it's like a pat on the back. It's like, I shouldn't feel good for it. Like, that's... So, just prefacing that, I don't like actually being called it. I feel like it's weird to me.
A lot of people use it to be performative, like a performative activist, right? Like, they want to be given something that they really should just be doing generally. I can understand.
Yeah. It sounds like, it's a weird, like, word to be like, I'm a fan of this, but it's like...
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. You get my point. But just to really, like, round out this conversation, I don't think that any ally is truly perfect, because we won't ever be, you know, we won't ever know your experience firsthand, or a member of the Black community, and know what it's like to live your everyday, or to be raised as a Black person. in Canada and America. But I do think that most allies are trying their best. I think that, like, with BLM this year in specific, what I found is really important is to not adapt to, like, what we've been saying for the past few years of, like, you know, someone will make a comment in a convo and you have that let it go mentality of, like, oh, this is just so and so and this is just how they are. And not taking those insensitive comments to light and, like, actually doing something about it. So either having that very uncomfortable conversation or, like, choosing to, you know, keep your circle tight. Yeah, that's kind of my piece of, like, learning, I guess, from this as someone who's a person of color but still outside this.
Yeah.
And I just put 3 suggestions for anybody who wants to support this movement but isn't Black themselves. And things that I find helpful is to, first and foremost, I know this sounds really, like, floaty and, like, given, but I think it's really important to listen to people of color if you're not, and listen to Black people in particular. And I wrote down listen by remembering, and what I mean by that is, like, you know, when you, like, as a kid, like, you'll hear your parents will talk to you about, like, their experience growing up as an immigrant, and they'll maybe tell you about a hard time, and, like, as you grow up as, like, a young kid until you're teens and until you're adults, you have that in the back of your mind of, like, oh, like, now I got my first job, now I know exactly how hard it is to, like, you know, get paid, or, like, you know, manage finances, and actually what the value of money is. And, like, so then your mind will go back into that story that they told you, and again, like, you'll, you know, try to find a new job or, like, learn things in school and juggle multiple responsibilities, and again you'll go back to what, like, your parents had to do at a very young age and go, okay, this story makes even more sense to me as I grow older. And I think that's exactly the approach we should take to stories of victims and of Black people in general, and think about things in context all the time like that. The second point, too, make sure that you know that you do have a role in this. I don't think anyone can get a jail-free card and be like, well, yeah, no. Like that, I have a Black friend, so, you know, yeah. Like, no, none of that shit. You have every right and need to educate yourself, read, watch Netflix documentaries. You have your capability to do that stuff. And to always remind yourself that when you're posting something, or not even posting something, if you're talking about the topic, if you're making it about you, you need to step back a little bit. And that's like that goes for any topic. That goes for, like, Me Too. That goes for, you know, LGBTQ rights. Like, if you're not a member of the community and, like, you end up talking about it in a way that makes you sound good, or you sound smart, or you sound whatever, like, I always have to do this for myself. Sometimes everyone's, like, faulted for any other topic, but it's just a constant reminder of, like, okay, is this, like, appropriate? And then, like, you know, stepping away if you
need to. I mean I think it's very, like, it goes back to very simple, like, sayings that we've been taught, like, think before you speak. I think that is something that we've been taught our entire lives, but for some reason people just don't take that into account when it comes to opening their mouth and saying things. Yeah. Like, for example, when, you know, when you see people in pain and see people saying, like, you know, hashtag Black Lives Matter, if you come at it and say, oh no, hashtag all lives matter, that's insensitive. Like, that's not thinking before you speak, because it's not that these people are saying all lives don't matter. They're saying that Black Lives Matter too. Like, it's not that, you know, it's like they're trying to amplify the voices of Black people because these are the people who are affected. Exactly. So think before you speak. And then I think for me, like, the place where I'm at is if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to learn, and you want to be a part of this, okay, I'm open to that. Come and speak with me. Come and, like, you know, do your research. But if you're not willing to listen, just be quiet and step aside. Like, that's where I'm at right now. Like, don't say nothing if you don't have the information. You don't want to learn. Like, if there's no intention to learn, step aside. Because I feel like at this point, it's not our jobs to convince you that our lives matter.
Yeah, there's only so much. Exactly, there's only so much we can do too. And, like, if you've been on the receiving end of having a difficult conversation with somebody who has, like, called you out for something, or, like, you've had, like, a difficult one-on-one, just know that, like, if they aren't the same with you anymore, it's probably because there's certain conversations, you know, like, if they're not listening to you in the first place, or if they've already made up their mind. I hate those conversations where like, you know, they've made a stance. people of color or allies or whatever you want to call it don't have to keep going. They don't have to be your therapists, right? So it's just like a couple of slides of statements that I think are really important, which is just because you're brown doesn't mean you're automatically an ally. Just because you're a therapist doesn't mean you are automatically an ally. Just because you love someone who's black doesn't mean you're automatically an ally. And it's like just almost like affirmations that are really important to like remember that that just because you like fall into a certain bucket or you feel like you know what that space is like doesn't mean that you're doing enough, or that like, again, like pat on your back, you're cool,
like,
whatever. No,
you shouldn't be looking for validation. Regardless, you should just be doing this because that's what you care about. We see a lot with like celebrities as well, specifically white celebrities, where they do this thing where they like did you see that video with a whole bunch of actors and actresses, and they were like, it was this weird, like, very dramatic black and white, like they were taking videos of themselves and they put it in black and white, and it was like, I stand with you.
No,
I don't need that. Like, we don't need that video from you.
Yeah.
Or like, for example, I mean, this is separate from the issue, but when the pandemic started, and they came up with like that, they sang that song, like, that's not,
the pandemic was a perfect actually example of like how like, exactly not to support like, you know, people when they're in
it's like, we don't need you to sing at us, we don't need to do little skits. I don't even know what it was. It's not necessary. Like, you as a celebrity, specifically as a celebrity, not only have the platform but have the money to create change. Put your money where your mouth is, 100%. Sirs and ma'ams, please. Because, like, that is where your power lies. As a celebrity, that's where your power lies. And if you want to be an ally, like a real ally, you should use the resources you have to create change. And obviously, I'm not saying throw all your money at it, but, like, there's so many, like, high-profile people that have donated so much to this. And it's like, you can do the same. We don't need your little skit. I've also seen like TikToks of people who do like contemporary dances to like a song, and it's like George Floyd. It's like, it's just like, what in your mind made you think, oh, I need to do that? Like, what in your mind was like, this is how I create change? And just show up. Like, and obviously at this time it's like, it's very difficult to do, like, obviously there's protests all around the world, and it's very difficult at this time. Everybody's scared of getting sick, and so like that's a legitimate worry. So like, if you can't show up to a protest, that's okay. But there are so many other things that you could be doing, whether it be fundraising. If you don't have the money to fundraise, spread information. Like, it's so easy to spread information, and then do the work internally in your communities. Like, I feel like at the heart, I am a positive person. I'm an optimistic person, so I think that there is a lot good being done, and a lot of the things that we end up seeing, like, at the end of the day, like, even though we have social media and everything is framed, guys, like, let's not forget. Even our social media, like, everything is framed for the pleasure, like, our viewing pleasure, because that's how they keep you on their sites. The media is framed by like gatekeepers that only care about certain messages. So like, at the end of the day, even though we see a lot of negative, and there is negative, let's not forget, but I do think that there are a lot of people, I think there are more people that care than don't. At least that's my belief. I think there are more humans that care about other humans that don't. But we're told that there's more hate than there is love, if that makes sense.
No, I feel that for 100%. I think our last section for today in terms of conversation is to really bring up some key resources that we found really helpful and insightful during this time. And just to give you some like a heads up, I think a cool thing that we want to do on our Twitter is to actually set up a thread of like all these posts and stuff that you'll be seeing on your screen, so that you can follow along and read them on your own time too. So check out our podcast Twitter profile thing over there.
You're like, what is it called again?
That, you know,
that page at Talkaholics Studios, right?
It should be
on Twitter. Yeah.
Look at the description.
Do we own this podcast?
Do we run this?
Do we run this?
Is this ours? So I'm going to share my screen really quickly again. But to begin off with, and I don't know if you've seen this, Iman, or how you feel about this, but I really have been appreciating all the stuff that the Daily Show has been producing and making.
Yeah, I've seen a couple things.
For this movement in particular, and I've always found like the Daily Show like really insightful and kind of gets to the point of the matter. And if you want to like, if you've never really given yourself a chance to like address any resource for BLM, I would highly recommend starting here. For me personally, just because it's one person talking to you about the movement, but also he's a Black person too, so it's important both ways. But this is just like things that I've bookmarked on my own personal Twitter and Instagram that I found really cool, and I'm going to definitely look into more later. But here is a compiled list of really cool movies that are from Black directors and screenwriters that I haven't really seen. So like none of these screenshots rang a bell to me. So I was like definitely going to save.
I saw the top right corner.
This one?
Yeah, I believe that's the. If I'm not mistaken, that's the one on Netflix by Spike Lee. It was really good. Cool. It's like it talks about police brutality, but it's also sci-fi. So it's a very interesting like mixture of genres. I really enjoyed it.
I love that. Okay, that's really cool. I'm gonna check that out later. So there's that. This is actually by someone I know, but he put together a list of books about Black history in particular and Black Muslim history, which is
so important.
Yeah, exactly. A nice
because people like don't know.
Yeah,
that there's a big population of Black Muslims.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so this is like a great list that I'm also hoping to get out of. A really cool thing so for me in particular, what I find on my feeds on any social, again, because I'm interested in animators and artists and gaming, and so that's kind of like what I see pop up. But an incredible thread that started that, like, for me, showed me so much really cool art that I've never seen in my entire life, and artists that I definitely need to hype up on my own time, is like this thread of Black artists that they were just kind of told, like, hey, if you want to shout yourself out, you can in this thread. And that was like a really nice moment for me to see, like, community building. A really good little slideshow of items that I think that are really cool to highlight actionable steps. It's just, again, like a list off of things you need to watch, you need to read, how to have family discussions. Like, it's just a really good touch point for all things about BLM, which I love. This stat was actually really kind of shouted a lot to me in terms of like the education that is required for American police officers, and gives you a context for the rest of the world, which I like highly recommend looking into this. Like, you know, the amount of hours that like a manicurist needs to do versus a police officer, which is jarring. Like, this is not the same job at all. So really, really highly recommend going through that. This has been everywhere, but again, just to make this about the Canadian context again, being aware that racism does exist in Canada.
100%.
And I mean, we could have like a whole other podcast.
It's a whole other discussion.
Like our own personal even like experiences.
Yeah.
As POCs, really great too. Resources that I found about addressing this issue with kids that I've like found and really loved. I would recommend going through this as well as this one.
There was that whole I can't remember if it was CNN, but some news outlet did that whole thing with Sesame Street. Did you see that?
Sorry, say that again. Sesame Street. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a whole like it wasn't I don't know if it was a Sesame episode or Sesame Street was on the news. Like, it was a news outlet that was hosting them.
Yeah.
And then they created a whole thing of like programming for kids, but about the situation.
Yeah, which I love. I think and it's not. I mean, obviously I'm biased, it's because I have like a lot of kids in my family, but it's just like that's where the discussions need to start first. They need to understand it better than we do. So this is a really good thread of like books I've never even seen in my life before about this topic. So love that. This video is like heartbreaking. So I would watch this only when you're ready, to be honest. But this is under a section I put in our notes called empathy. If you want to really understand that your life is different than a person who's Black, this is it. But that kind of rounds it out for me. Like Again, we'll share these on, all of our social media platforms, so you can check them out yourself. One thing I couldn't find in time.
Yeah, we'll definitely come up with a list of like the fundraisers and the what are they called? Petitions that are still going around, that are circulating, that need the support, and we'll link that either, you know, somewhere on this, wherever you're listening to this, we'll link it there, and then we'll also link all these resources on that rally page. So look out for that. But yeah, I mean, I thank you, Razia, for compiling that, because
no problem.
It's different for us because I think that a lot of the people that are in our circle, whether that be the wider circle of our social media or just our closer circle, are very much a part of, whether they're allies or a part of the Black community, are very much like active members. And so we see a lot of this content being shared. I've shared a lot of content over the past couple on my stories and stuff like that. So I think that we get an influx of information, but for people who maybe don't have the same circles, this may be a good starting point for you guys to find the information you need to learn more and to just learn how to be a little bit more empathetic and understanding of the situation going
on. But just like a reminder to just, you know, if you need to step away, don't feel like you have to. It shouldn't be a thing you should feel pressured to do. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, and I want to speak. Yeah, no, sorry. I just wanted to say, like, specifically to, like, if you're a Black person watching this, like,
oh yeah,
like, just in my personal experience, I feel like I always have to on at all moments. Like, I always have to be ready to speak about something. I always have to be, because I'm like, this is my community. I need to be there and be a part of the voice. But something that I've been learning, and like something that I've been seeing being circulated in spaces, is that like you're allowed to take a break. Like, you are experiencing a trauma, and like even it doesn't matter. Like, say for example, like sometimes I think I'm in Canada, like this is happening in the States. Like the African American experience in the States is so different from like me, Ethiopian Black person in Canada. Like it's a different experience. So sometimes I'm like, I feel like I should still be putting in like 100% of the work because I'm not as affected as them. But it's like, it's still pain and trauma at the end of the day because you're still a part of that community. And so it's important that, yeah, like Razia said, you're giving yourself mental health breaks and you're talking to people you trust.
That's a huge thing that I was just
to kind of unpack, everything. But anyways, I hope that this was a helpful episode for anybody who's listening and watching. I hope that it's still a serious topic, and like I've heard this so many times, but it's a marathon and not a sprint. Like, there's so much work that needs to be done, and that can seem daunting and overwhelming. But I think that if everybody does their part, like, we will see change. And like, can you imagine, like, in such it's been like a very it's been a very tough time, but if you look at it, it's been a very short period in terms of like when the protests started and what change has happened since then, and like seeing the like worldwide movement happening, and like how fast things can mobilize when people actually do the work, and not just Black people, everybody does the work, right? So even though we do have a long way to go, I think that it's overall a positive change, I hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, we hope, as always, that you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any questions or any comments, anything, you guys can comment down below. We'd love to have a discussion
with you about this. Like, this is something
comment down below.
Hyper interested in hearing from you about. So
yeah, we can discuss on whichever platform you guys want. If you guys want to message us personally, you can DM us on any other platform, email us, whichever feels comfortable for you. And we hope that everybody's staying safe.
Yeah.
And everybody's taking care of not only themselves, but the people in their community, and staying in touch with and keeping up with their Black friends and family, and checking in and making sure they're okay. And yeah, that's all I really.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. And yeah, we'll talk to you in the next one.